Hello and welcome to the MetaPod Pokemon TCG podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. Today we got a very special episode. Sean and I weren't able to record last week. I was over like 5 states away. Sean has an actual life. You know, the busy happens. What?
We all have actual life. I have job too, and I'm just
you have like an adult official life. But we've got a lot of great stuff for you today. We are going on part 2 of what I call, dubbed on YouTube, the rising stars of the online era. First, we talked to different content creators like Shay from the Slowpoke Well and Pumpka Amy. But now we are going into the online TOs. This is an instrumental part that has been incredible to see in the last year and a half. We have wonderful people in here. We have Connor and Neil with us today. Limitless, Connor, and Neil Pie, or you may know Connor as Doomsday. That's another alias that they run. But friends, introduce yourselves. Let's go Limitless, Connor first, introducing ourselves.
Yeah, so I'm Connor. I am the Limitless stream coordinator, basically. Behind the scenes, running the streams for Limitless. I also now run streams for a company who sell TCG products in Europe as well. So it's actually a full-time job now, which is super cool. But yeah, run streams, do terribly at tournaments. Basically me.
Hey, you know what? I help run a podcast about the Pokemon trading card game, but how many online finishes in the top 8 do I have? I'll tell you that right now. But congratulations on your full-time job, by the way.
Yeah, it's super cool. Keeps me surprisingly busy. There's a lot more work involved when you actually have to do it all day, every day, but it's good.
Yeah. And Neil, do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay, yeah. So most people that have heard of me would probably know me as the lead organizer of the Sunday Open, which I ran for over a year now. I also was one of the lead organisers on POG 2020, and I'm an in real life organizer and judge.
I know you best from your you literally run the best giveaways on Twitter.
The busted giveaways too. Yeah, that's a new thing that I find funny, so I keep doing it. That's the only thing behind that. I think I found some.
I'm sad I didn't win the ripped card. I actually really wanted that.
That was a genuine ripped card as well. I'd had it sat on my desk for ages, and I was looking at it, and I saw all these people going, "Hey, I'm going to give away shiny Crobats and shiny Dragapults," and I was like, "Do you know what? Someone needs to win a ripped Farfetch that I found on a table 18 months ago. Yeah, let's have that." And 6 people joined, and it was a huge success in my book.
It's funny, it's trendy, and that's kind of like the epitome though of like both of you in the scene. It's just like having that sort of impact, you know, like although it was 6 people, you know, like so many people saw, you know, that giveaway, and so many people had good laughs because that's like the trendy thing to do now is with these online cards, just giving stuff away. And you know what, you also have given away many opportunities for Sean's run tournaments in there. Speaking of, actually, I'm going to deviate. Wow, I'm going way off the rail today, but Sean, I saw the first Digimon tournament on Play Limitless.
I hacked the website. No. So Connor actually reached out to me.
Well, I mean, like you're the organizer for it, but like the Digimon is on Play Limitless now.
Yes, I know this is a Pokemon pod, but yeah, Connor reached out because I think Connor is also a Digimon person. He has been sucked
very much so
into the world of Digimon like myself, and he obviously knows that I like Digimon, and it's like, a Pokemon person who's familiar with our platform has used it before and also plays Digimon. The Venn diagram there is very small. So I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to test it out, and hopefully after next Wednesday, I mean, I'm not expecting any issues. And Connor, I have as you've seen on my Discord, a bunch of people that I've listed as tourney organizers that I'm hoping to sort of shepherd onto the Limitless platform, because I mean, we'll talk about this later when we get into it, but Play Limitless is just it's so incredible for the Pokemon scene. not only the ease of organizing and hosting tournaments, but like the data that you get afterwards and the access to that data it's not something any other TCG I think Magic may have it in some capacity. Yeah, but like otherwise it's all very manual for people to find deck lists, and everybody's just kind of going on gut feel, like, oh, I think this deck is being played the most. And so it's nice to have something that tells you your gut might not be right. So yeah, very exciting. But
Please
I guess
don't break it.
Yeah.
Please don't break the website.
I don't think we'll break. It's only 32 players, so I think you can manage 32 for the first one. But yeah, I mean, getting back into Pokemon, I guess we can just start diving into to the questions now. Like Jake was saying, we wanted to like sort of turn the attention to the tournament organizer side of things during COVID, but we'd love to know before the pandemic happened, right? I think, for Pumpkin Amy, I think that she was a judge, I believe it was, in her locals, but was not a content creator. But Shay was a content creator and player for a long time. For both of you, we'll start with Neil. What was your involvement in the community like before the pandemic? Just to give people context as to how it changed.
Yeah, so before everything went down, I was running two local leagues, one in a hobby club and one in a gaming shop, and very much concentrated on the local scene. I would get involved on Twitter with a lot of Pokemon players, just mucking about and making stupid comments and sharing bad deck lists and that sort of thing, playing very bad decks to regionals, doing really badly, the usual run-of-the-mill kind of thing. But then as the pandemic started to hit last year, there was a lot of talk about we needed to shut things down. And before we did, I'd already been running, I think prior to probably 2019, I organised some online tournaments just through local friends on Twitter with about 18 players through a Discord server, like Thursday nights or something. But as we shut our league, it was my Sunday league, we shut down, and it was like, well, what am I going to do on a Sunday now? So immediately that Sunday, I got out on Twitter and was like, does anyone want to play in an online tournament, see what happens? And we got about 30 players, I think. And it kind of all went from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, the Sunday Open now is kind of one of those staples, but I'm amazed that you were doing online tournaments before the pandemic, because
well, it's never really seemed that off to me to do it. Like, I've always been gaming online anyway.
Yeah.
And we all communicate online anyway. We've all got Discord servers here and there. Our local Pokemon leagues all have a Facebook chat that everyone's on all the time. So it really, to me, as someone who I work online, I've been online since, I'm older than most of you, but since very early days, very, very early days, I've been online. So I'm kind of used to it. It just seemed the obvious thing to do. I don't see why. And that's kind of, maybe that was advantageous when the pandemic hit, because there were certain people who were already geared up, I think, to make that switch into online, who were already ready to like start powering out content, for example, for content creators. There were certain TOs who'd already been working online and communicating online for years and were able to do that and switch straight into it and have success. Whereas it took maybe, I think, sort of 6 months or so before we really started seeing a lot of activity start to come through. The first 6 months of the pandemic was very quiet. I think we had maybe 2 or 3 online tournaments, and that was about it. But I'd say, so having that experience of doing that, it didn't seem strange to me. It was just a very obvious thing to do.
I just think for the majority of players, like, especially during those first 6 months, we didn't really like get the magnitude of like everything going on. So everyone was like, we'll just hold out for a little bit, play some Fortnite or whatever, a couple other games. And then once IRL events come back in like 3 months, we'll be fine. And then
that was it.
Happened.
I was like, I'll do this Sunday tournament. It'll probably be 6 weeks. It'll be fine. 6 or 7 weeks, just so we can keep our hand in. Yeah, and here we are. What we say.
Here we are, 18 months later.
Still doing it.
Yeah.
I want to ask real quick, what is it like? So you were doing the Sunday Open. What was almost like the pressure like to keep it going and to keep the Sunday Open like happening literally every single Sunday, just about, with the influx of people that were just coming in and coming in and coming in.
It was huge after POG. After POG happened, I personally hit a bit of a black spot. I would put it down to burnout. I didn't want to do it anymore. I'd only envisioned in my head. I'd only sort of got my head around, I'll do this for the summer, and then once the summer's out of the way, I go back to work. Lockdown stops. We all go back to normal when it's done. But it just kept on growing, and like for me, it was very difficult. It was very difficult to when you're. I try to explain it to a lot of people, because people think, well, all you're doing is standing at a computer and you choose to do it anyway. But when you're locked in to do something that is scheduled every single week, and that's an amount of time that you don't want to get out of, you want to do it. But that's time you could otherwise be spending with your family or spending with your friends, and you're just sitting there for 6 hours getting abuse, and which is very true. There were times when like the headphones came off and got thrown across the room. No word of a lie. And I think I had to take a few weeks out. I just had to stop. And I was like, sorry, guys. And I much love to, like, you might know Jono and Nathan at the time. So that's Kaiser Scorch, you might know Nathan as, literally took over. I was like, look, guys, I can't do this. I need a few weeks. Threw the headset off and didn't come back for a few weeks. I came back just with a different handle on things. A really different handle on things now. It's good. LOTP helps a lot, which is good. It helped a huge lot, but it was difficult for a while.
I mean,
But
Connor.
not now.
No. Connor, for you, I guess, like you said you were running the stream stuff. I don't know if we said this on the pod or we chatted about this, but running the stream stuff for Limitless, was that your life sort of before pandemic as well?
Yeah, so before that, I got involved with Limitless just before Sindelfingen regionals, like it's the only expanded regional we had in forever. And I joined as a caster. Then David Hochman, who was the stream guy, was in charge of the stream when I got there. And basically, they were bringing in new casters because he was moving to Japan for a bit. And they needed someone to help cover. I was brought in. They were kind enough to ask me to join and kind of keep going with them, which was great. And then kind of built up more and more stream knowledge. I'm tech orientated anyway. I worked in the sciences, so it's something I was familiar with. So it was kind of fine. But then just before the pandemic, we kind of got we got invited to do a series. So Limitless is the stream site. So the Limitless is like the players, right? We have our team. Then we have the website. Then we now have the LMTP. And there's the stream. We're all over the place. But our players got invited to take part in an invitational with Brave Birds, one of the teams from Mexico, with the plan of streaming it. But obviously, they're in Mexico. So we had to do all the games via Discord and work out basically how to efficiently stream gameplay from remotely. And in our cases, we also had it with 2 sets of hand cams. So we had the hand cam from Mexico and from the Limitless player at the same time. So we kind of got a head start on the streaming side just before, I think that was like February, which then meant that when we got overly ambitious and tried to do the Limitless Online Series 1, I still have flashbacks to those sound notifications for judge calls. Yeah, that was terrifying. But when we got into that, it meant we were set up to do the streams, right? Like we'd sort of got our head around it, because from our perspective, if we wanted to do the event, we wanted to make sure we could stream it, because that's what we're known for. It meant that we kept the channels up and running and kind of kept them relevant and not just mothball them for the year. So yeah, that was that. And also just before the pandemic, me and Robin had been doing our own podcast that since got abandoned, which is the only other particular involvement I had with the community at the time.
Yeah. But then obviously you have been working with them throughout the pandemic on all of the streams. I think the Limitless Online Series is one that you mentioned. I guess I wonder how many listeners started playing after the pandemic and after the Limitless Online series, but like a quick rundown of what that was, because I know it was a big event for the community, especially at the time.
Okay, can be summarized as a mess. So we ran that on Battlefy, and basically, the long and short was Battlefy is not designed for Swiss tournaments with deck lists. Like, neither is Smash, to be honest. They're just not designed for this kind of game. They're designed for fighting games. But halfway through, literally, we were still trying to run the event. We got a message from a rep from Smash GG going, "Hey, want some help?" So we were like, "Yes, we'll try that again in 2 weeks. Thank you. We'll talk to you." So Smash GG reached out, gave us a load of help, gave us some dev time and stuff like that to get it up and running. And then we ran a series of 4 tournaments, one a month-ish, or one every couple of weeks, I think we ended up doing for the qualifiers. And then it was the finals. We had to get over a certain number of points. So that was the series. We do actually hold the record for, I think, the second largest official or like Pokemon tournament ever.
Oh,
is actually the 4th qualifier. Or it's like second or third. So they were like, we had like 1,300 people for the 4th qualifier, which the idea came about because we were complaining that we had no tournaments to play. Me and Philip, I think it was me. Basically, the conversation went, we could just run one. How hard could it be? Those are famous last words.
Yeah.
And that was legitimately all it took to convince everyone, was we just went, we could probably run our own, right? And then we did. So, yeah, that was the first like major online event. Then POG happens August of last year, right?
Yes.
August.
It was like a replacement for Worlds, basically.
Yeah, where I was part of the stream team for that event. But yeah, the Limitless Online Series 1 was ambitious.
Yes.
It was interesting because the first one was tried twice, right?
Yes.
It was on like Battlefy at first or Smash. One of those two.
First, then Smash. Basically, we broke the website.
Yeah. I remember that because I was playing in it, and I went like 0-1 or 0-2 in the beginning, and then you're like, oh, never mind, we're starting over, and I was like, yes, maybe I got a chance.
Yeah. So the way that ended up playing out is obviously anyone can sign up on Smash or Battlefy, right, to run events. However, if you think your event's going to be over a certain size, you should probably tell them, because they'll put you from the baby server to the big server.
Mm-hmm.
Now the thing is, we didn't have a clue what our attendance was going to be. So none of us really we thought we'd get like 100 people, which would be fine on one of those things. Then we got to like several hundred, and we were going, oh. At which point it was a bit late to try and get hold of anyone to kind of go, can we maybe move to a big server, please? Where Smash just kind of put us. There were issues on.
Oh, we lost your audio there.
We are back here on the Metapod. We had some technical difficulties because it's not a Metapod podcast. Oh my light's flickering now. Please, I don't want any more problems in this podcast anymore. But we're gonna have some good times. I already know it coming up here soon. But let's just go back to the questions. So, I mean, Limitless, Connor. Limitless was already like an organization, as you were mentioning, before the pandemic. You know, like any results information of like regionals or SPs or like anything Pokemon trading card game related that was bigger than like a cup or something, like the information was already there. So the evolution going into online tourneys, what has been the biggest part of that evolution of Limitless?
I mean, to be honest, outside of Robin being a wizard, not like the rest of the Limitless team, like we've just been doing our own thing, and then Robin's just over there fixing the world's problems one website at a time. Like the Limitless main website was Robin and David. Largely, they were the ones who mostly put up the results and like made the website run. And for us, the online website, so the Limitless Online Tournament platform, or play.limitless, was because during qualifier 1, Robin went, "These websites are awful. I bet I could make my own." And he did. You guys didn't it. There was a gap between the qualifiers and the website launching. There wasn't. It literally was end of qualifier 1. 2 days later, it's like, cool. So I've got the pairing algorithm done. 2 days later, it's like, okay, I think I've worked out account registration. And then it was mostly just bells and whistles from that point on before we launched it. The guy's insane. But yeah, that was the biggest one, is that we went from we had to rely on TOs, especially from the streaming side, right? And even getting the deck lists from regionals, like for European regionals, we were normally there as a team. And it was only because we kind of knew some of the TOs and stuff that we'd be like, oh, hey, do you mind, after the event's done, can we get some deck lists for top 32s? We could post them. And 9 times out of 10, they were fine with it. To now we run our own, so we don't have to ask anyone, which is kind of nice. But that's the biggest shift, is we've gone from being very reliant on a TO to being one, which is a very different side of the coin. Because also now I realize why they told us no so often. Now I'm like, oh, okay. When you said no before, when we asked these questions, I was like, what? It's like advertising for your event or whatever. And I'm like, oh no, I kind of see why now, huh? That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, it's been a very different perspective on the whole tournament scene, to be honest.
And just the wealth of information. I mean, I can go on Play Limitless now every day and find a new deck. Whereas before I could only get a deck every month or something. Net decking is a huge thing for me personally, because I'm a trash deck builder. Everything that I make goes 0-3 drop. But having the accessibility to try out new ideas, to see what people are doing, trends, especially the meta game. I don't think the meta game tab specifically was as detailed almost as what it was before Play Limitless. When you're looking at results and things like that, and that part to me is just astounding. I just tip my hat off real quick.
Well, so that's right. That was why the LimitlessTCG website existed in the first place, right? Was to collect these things so you could see how formats developed, right? You'd see. I used to love doing this. If you'd go in to see a regional in the US one week, and then you could see the counter picks crop up at the next one, right? And you could see that people had not just changed card inclusions because of the presence of this other deck. So that was always fascinating. But for me, I also play Hearthstone. And Hearthstone has a website which does this in real time, because they're an online platform, called HS Replay, which is just mind-blowing. You go on, you go, I would like to play this type of deck, and then they just do a list. And it's literally updated in real time. And I was like, well, okay, we can't quite do that because we don't have access to the PTCGO data to be able to do that. But why couldn't we basically do the same thing via, just have the tournaments on a place where we do have the data? The API is available. You just have to ask Robin and he'll give it to you. I know it was Dino Data. I forget what they rebranded to.
Trainer Hill now.
Yeah. Has it, and other people have asked for the access code. It's all there basically as a big old file that you can pull, and you can do round by round analysis or deck by deck. It's actually really interesting, because it lets the format develop quite quickly, which is also a downside from my perspective, right? We've always had people complain that formats get stale, but that was when we had 2 regionals a month and an IC every 3. Now you're playing 3 regionals a week effectively in scale, right? There are 3 big-ish tournaments a week. You're going to solve and work out what the best decks are. And then you're going to play them into the ground, and then you're going to get bored. And I honestly think that is a huge contributing factor to people kind of being bored with the game. What seems like so much quicker, I know they've always been, it's always been like this, but you get player burnout, as you do with TO burnout, right? People just play too much because it's so easy to sign up and play a tournament every night of the week that they forget maybe they shouldn't. Maybe they can just take a break.
I think that's a huge thing as well, that since one of the main changes we've had since going to online is like you say, the availability of tournaments and the amount of games people can play over the course of a week or a month, and the amount of cards people can draw and the amount of decisions people can make. I think that while it does feed into burnout, feeds into a bit of negativity and people not liking the format, I think it's also made a lot of players a lot better, a lot more quickly than they would have done in real life play. Maybe if they were playing at league once a week and then traveling to a cup at the weekend and then maybe a regional every couple of months, we've seen a lot of players really come and rise up and become notable during the online scene, just because they're the sort of player who's been able to play 5, 6, 7, 8 tournaments a week and get all of that wealth of experience in a very short amount of time. And there are absolute definite players who you would never have heard of, who I think we're going to see when we go back into real life play start topping events, just because of the amount of experience they've built up for themselves during the pandemic.
Well, that was actually a huge factor, and the thing that I'd like to see continue when things go back to normal with like the in-person events is we had winners for the Limitless Online series and players who were juniors, but from countries that basically have no organized play, right? Like,
yeah,
or like they have basically no way of taking part properly, and they're going to win these 1,000 people events. Like, that's insane. And it's also, not everyone has the financial means to travel to a regional or an IC, but 90% of people, everyone listening to the podcast has a device probably capable of playing PTCGO in some way, right? Which means you can play. That's it. Like, that's the only requirement. Can you run PTCGO? Cool, you can play. And that I love. Like, it's so much easier for people to get into competitive play now, because you're now not having to commit to drive or fly to a major tournament. You can just do it in your pajamas in your living room.
Yeah, it's huge as well. I remember the first time we had a junior win the Sunday Open. It just blew my mind. Like, we had a few seniors winning it, and then we had a junior win it, and now there are a couple of juniors that are consistently, making top cut in several hundred player events. And these are like 9-year-old kids, 10-year-old kids. It's like, that's crazy, right? But then they're going to go back to organized play, and sorry, out you go. You're not allowed to play anymore, right?
Yeah, it's little Timmy. I'm sorry, you can't buy the $500 ticket to go to LA or whatever to go play in a regional.
Yeah. I mean, I will be interested to see if the parents, if they see the success that their kids have had, are like, okay, I guess we'll take little Timmy to regional X or regional Y. These also might be the kids who are already, because there is that like small group, I think, of juniors who are very well supported by their parents. And those are the ones that
I
can.
think if any parent is letting their kids sit around playing Pokemon online for as long
hours.
as some of these players are sitting around playing Pokemon online, they're pretty supportive. Yeah,
like some of these tournaments are long.
Oh my god!
Like,
and in the small hours too, right? If you're in Chile and you're playing in a tournament, in like a European tournament, you're up till 4 a.m. Like, to play in POG, and in some of the Limitless qualifiers, these kids are there for long hours. It's crazy.
Yeah, that was the thing we tried to do with the Limitless qualifiers, is we tried to do different start times to like spread them out around the world.
Yeah.
Turns out if the staff are all European, that just means we're really grumpy.
Yeah.
Like, because I remember this was discussed for POG, right? For POG last year, we were discussing, when should we start to try and make it as fair as possible, which then meant that I was running the stream until 3 a.m. or something one morning, and it was just like, look, guys. If the staff are all from one area, I'm sorry, but I'm going to put my foot down and say the staff get priority for some of these things, because you don't want to make a judge call and someone who's now been up for like 19 hours has to come in and try and argue over this bizarre ruling because PTCGO bugged. Because my answer will be, I don't care, go away.
It's like,
I remember
sitting
in front of the screen with it felt like my eyes were bleeding because I've been staring at a screen for 18 hours the previous day and had 3 hours sleep and up again. And I was like, oh, this is terrible.
Yeah, that was rough.
I just want to give this question to both of you right now. Going back to PTCGO bugs. If the Pokemon Company International came to both of you and said, we're willing to do one thing to improve PTCGO. I rag on PTCGO all the time. I think it's bad. If they came to you and they said to you, we'll grant you one wish for PTCGO, what would you both say? Neil Pye, you go first.
Can I cheat and have two?
Yeah, you can. I mean,
I've got one straightforward thing that I want, which is please just change the 25-minute match clock on a friendly challenge to a 12.5-minute match clock. When they brought in, I think it was, we'd been in lockdown and playing online for a little while, and all of a sudden they popped up, hey, we've made this change. You can have time challenges now. And we were all like, brilliant, fantastic. That's going to be the first of many features they're going to add to help out all the online players. And it sort of stopped there. And if that clock was 12.5 minutes, which is long enough on both sides to play one game of PTCGO, we would just see all of the problems we have with tournaments online about timer stalling just gone. They would just go. It wouldn't be an issue anymore. Players, I saw someone say that would put stall decks at a disadvantage, but not really. If you've ever played a stall deck properly in real life, you have to play fast.
Yeah.
Like you're not sitting there thinking about it. You know, you have to know exactly what you're doing. Yeah, like when you watch Sander play, if you ever see him streaming, he knows he's ready to click immediately exactly what he's going to click before the card's even out. He's waiting for PTCGO to let him click. You have to play fast. So you'll still see, you know, the good stall players would still succeed. And all of the problems we have with timer stalling just go. Literally go. It would be so good. That would be my number one. But my second wish, if I'm allowed to, would be for them to grant early access to players to when they add the card pool into the system. I think one of the best ways they can get rid of a lot of the bugs would be to allow like a beta scheme or an opt-in scheme where players can build those decks early, start practicing and testing against each other before they're live on the system and live in the public, but it's under a beta program. So they spot bugs, they find bugs, and all of the card interactions that we find on day one that make the game practically unplayable at a competitive level, they can be spotted well ahead, all reported, fixed, and then rolled out. That would be my second wish. I don't think the second one's well. I think both are probably achievable. I'm not asking for, you know, huge changes.
I think like Overwatch does that. Yeah. I remember like playing Overwatch. They had like a testing area almost where like characters got in early or whatever. I'm pretty sure Overwatch.
They have a separate server.
Talking about Blizzard right now and prompting Blizzard, but like I think Overwatch does that kind of style, which I really, really liked when I was in like the pro scene.
Yeah, I think it's a standard thing when you're developing any kind of game or software. Is you let players play it beforehand. I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe we don't know about it, but the amount of bugs that get shipped. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Like mine's very much related. Of give it to a company who give a damn. Right? Like when PTCGO was like the first developed, it was supposed to be a fairly smallish project for the company they gave it to, and now during the course of the pandemic, it has grown. Whether that growth will continue or not, I don't know. But the gist of it is they haven't given it to someone who's a company that is involved with the Pokemon franchise, right? Which means that it's a project, and I would assume that there is some form of contract that says like X number of hours to implement X features per X time period, right? Whatever. But if you gave it to a company or someone who was really passionate about the franchise, you'd probably get more out of those hours, or they would anticipate some of these bugs, or they would, because they understand the game, right? Outside of a coding level, they understand what's going on, then you'd probably not implement some of the things that have been implemented in the way they have been. Like some of the bugs that crop up are mind-boggling because they fix one thing and seemingly that breaks another entirely unrelated thing, which means that when it was implemented, the logic behind the game, fundamentally, like the rules of the game and how cards interact, may have been slightly missed, which is fixed by giving it to a dev team who know the game. It's like it's the same with like TOs and like content creators who know the game will tend to make content or decisions for tournaments that are better because they understand what they're trying to do clearer. So yeah, give it to someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Whenever we talk bugs, I think it was like a year ago. It was last year, like maybe like either Darkness Ablaze's release or something. It was like late summer or maybe during the summer, but it was like it was as soon as the set released, there was just this huge influx of bugs. And I remember there was one where it was like you played a certain card at a certain time and like all of the cards from your deck like went into your active Pokemon. The active Pokemon like flipped over. Does anybody else like remember like that slew of bugs? I made a video on it. I was trying to find the video of just like all the bugs. There was like 15 different like major bugs that broke the game that people found out. I just remember I was like constantly re-scrolling Twitter trying to find the next funniest thing that I've ever seen in my life. But man, I will never forget that time. It was absurd. Yeah. And then like Beast Energy a couple of years ago was banned for a long time on PTCGO. It was like 6 months, something like that.
I don't think it would have stayed banned for as long if PTCGO had been seeing the amount of use that it sees at the moment. Just, do you know what I mean? Yeah. If there'd been people playing all the time and making noise about it, I think a lot of people, all the main competitive players wouldn't have been playing on PTCGO. They'd have been like, no, I'll just test in real life. PTCGO's rubbish. It doesn't, it's bugged. It's no point. And they don't make enough noise to get it fixed, you know?
That's actually a huge factor as well, right? And this is something that I always try and bear in mind when these conversations come up is to Pokemon, the competitive community that we're all part of by default, right? Or the very engaged community is such a tiny, tiny fraction of the user base. We do not factor into their decisions whatsoever. From their perspective, a regional, all of the play Pokemon stuff, that's just marketing budget, right? Which means, cool, we turn up, so we help make some of the money back because we give some tickets in or whatever. But like they're probably still making a loss on most of these events, which then means it's a marketing cost. So what we don't really matter as far as they are concerned. Like it's not as relevant when we're complaining about, oh, this very specific card interaction doesn't work quite the way it was intended, because there's tens of thousands, if not millions, of other players out there who wouldn't even know that was how the card should work, right? Because that's not how they engage.
I mean, numbers wise, you can look it up and see worldwide how many players there are that have even earned CP by turning up at a challenge, and compare that to the number of Pokemon Go players, for example, or the number of units sold of Sword and Shield, like the video game. We're tiny. We're tiny. We don't. Being able to acknowledge that is fine, but a lot of people get a. I think they get a think we're a little bit more important than we actually are in the grand scheme of things. And it's not to say we shouldn't want things to be better, but yeah, in terms of thinking as everything is a business, and as you say, a regional, the World Championships, the CP grind, it's a marketing effort for the Pokemon company. Yeah, that's what it is.
Whenever I bash on TPCI, though, I always like to say I think the last 5 months have been a lot better with TPCI, like interacting with the community. I think with the last set release, I think they put a patch out like a day later of some bugs that had been arise, and that was like the fastest I've ever seen them work on patching things up. And then what they are doing, working with content creators, sending them codes to give away, sending them boxes and things.
Yeah, it's huge.
I applaud them for that. Recognizing
it's good.
that.
I love going online and seeing other TOs holding, boxes full of the latest product while I stand at my desk and drum my fingers empty-handed. That's great.
I think
I want to.
That's not saying anything. It's wonderful.
Has TPCI, maybe not necessarily YouTube, but just have you heard TPCI reaching out to different TOs? Like,
The only one I've heard of would be I know Maddie from Chill was granted some product, but he's also a pretty big content creator, right? He's got quite a decent YouTube following as well. A lot of the sanctioned like qualified professors, so TOs, judges, we're all available to help out for things like Players Cups. Anybody who runs a league would have been running a team challenge, so we're all still running online events. There are online events run through TPCI. But I don't see that from my mind, I don't see them reaching out to some online organizer that runs a tournament asking them to come and help. To me, it should come from the organizer. The organizer should, I want to become more involved with organized play. I want to be more involved with TPCI.
It kind of happened though. So Lydia,
there was one time during the Limitless series, I think it was the third one, like the Pokemon Twitter,
they
shouted
tweeted us.
out.
Yeah, they tweeted us, which was insane.
That's cool.
Like our reaction to that was, "Oh my god, what is happening?" Because like that doesn't happen easily. But Lydia, so Lydia is a judge, like she's a qualified judge, but her first major judging and TOing experience was the Limitless Online stuff, right? And then she was one of the head judges for PC2, I think, for Players Cup 2. Like she was like one of the lead judges on that because like she'd worked with Pokemon before as well, but
she was already part of the professor program though. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She was part of it. They already knew of her, but they were like, okay, but you kind of shown that you can run these big online events. We're running a large online event. Could you help?
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's what I'd like to see. Like I say, as we go back, as IRL comes back, I don't know how they're going to handle it. I have a dream world in my head where somehow there's a way to earn CP that doesn't involve, schlepping around the country, playing in a League Cup every weekend in a different store. Like the organized play program, we talk about it as a marketing tool, but it's also there to support stores. So, as an organizer, I've run leagues like a hobby league, which is not based in the shop, and a league which is based in the shop. Now, if you're not based in the shop, you can't have league challenges, you can't have league cups, and the justification behind that is because those are to support the stores, which is perfectly fine and viable. Personally, I question whether the best support for a store is captured by having 30 grinders turn up once every 3 months. Yeah. And then descend on the store, with packed lunches, and then leave and never come back. And then the week later at League, you've got, 5 people, 4 people, 3 people. I'd like to see, I think the team challenge was fantastic. I know it got a lot of bad press on Twitter. It wasn't necessarily handled well by the TOs running it. I don't know. My experience was great. It got our locals back to playing. Our locals weren't really into playing in all the online tournaments. I think probably because the standard is actually quite high. It's a lot higher than most players who aren't playing online would necessarily recognize. I think there's a very high standard of play online. Our locals would turn up, enter a tournament, go 0-3, drop every time. Getting them actually as a community, playing together, testing against each other, playing against another store, I thought it was great. And it really helped build a community around the players attached to the store, and increased rivalries between a store and a neighboring store. And it helped to build that local sense of community again. I'd really like to see something like that stay, rather than the focus be on individual players who just, hop round and round and round from cup to cup to cup to cup to cup. I think that takes something away from it. It's not where I'd like to see us go when we go back, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The team prizing also, the prizing allocation for the team challenge, it's phenomenal.
That was pretty sweet, right? Yeah, I don't expect that to continue, but yeah, that was pretty sweet.
I mean, my thought, I think I've said this several months ago now on the pod, but and this maybe brings us to the point about like, what do we think will happen once IRL events come back to online events? And your thoughts on whether TPCI should find a way to integrate whether they're existing online events, or like maybe like encouraging organizations to start their own. But I personally have always thought that TPCI should find a way to bring online events into the sanctioned play where you can earn CP. I see your point, Neil, about like they exist to support stores, but like if you did one basically big regional every 2 months as an online event, right? Like I don't think it wouldn't hurt any stores all that much, like per region, right? Like, because you're thinking like, the Chill TCG series, 400 or 500 people, the Limitless series, you can get upwards of 700 to 1,000 people. And I think that would, to me, like, I don't know, I want y'all's thoughts about that though.
I think that, okay, it has to come from within the professor program. So at the moment, the professor program, you have one qualification to be an organizer, and that's someone who's allowed to run tournaments, and there are specific responsibilities that person would have. Another qualification is to be a judge, and again, it's a different test. You have to know more about rulings and that sort of thing. If the Pokemon Company are prepared to allow professors to run online events unsupervised in the form of the team challenge, which they've done, and under supervision,
with scrutiny by the Pokemon Company.
With scrutiny by the Pokemon Company as part of the Players' Cup, there is the next logical step to me, which is to allow sanctioned professors to run online events, officially sanctioned online events. And you wouldn't enter into that running a 700-man event, because you don't enter the professor program like that. You have to successfully report your league attendance for 3 months, and then you have to successfully run and report 3 monthly league challenges. So there's a very long period of being a professor before you're even allowed to hold a league cup. And then you have to have a higher qualification before you can judge at a regional. And so it's a very slow process that is very controlled, very monitored. And I'd like to see that extended to online. I would. I think there's a place for it. I think there's an appetite for it. It just needs to be put in place by the person at the top with control. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work. What we don't want to have, though, is you don't want to have somebody with no experience running their 750-man event. The proverbial hits the fan, everything goes wrong. So it's really got to be taken in baby steps to get to where we want it to be.
One interjection that I want to hear Connor's thoughts on this too, which is that like I think we've already seen a little bit of, even as intended as people can be, lots of people being able to run events on Limitless. I think that's great because they're not sanctioned. It's like trust or don't trust the TOs. But even the ones that are very well known make lots of mistakes. And I'm like, there should probably, if Pokemon wanted to do this, be a standard. But
well, that's actually a huge factor in the online community, because there's no barrier to entry, right? To run an event on Limitless, there is a very simple quiz, where in theory you can just read the document and you should be able to answer the questions. So the barrier to entry is minimal. Actually getting involved with a store to become a TO for a store is actually a lot more involved and vets out a lot of the people who, and kind of enforces a level of maturity in decision making that doing so online may not, right? Because, the store owner has to decide that you're someone that should be allowed to run something in their store, right? They should decide that you're a suitable fit. Or it is the store owner, in which case they've sunk a load of money into it. So they're committed, right? Like they're not going to try and do this in a rush. And then because you have to build up the reputation in real life of getting your league going, getting to the number of the minimum number of people attending your league to get to a league challenge can be really difficult if you're a small store. And you have to make sure it's engaging. People feel welcome to come and play, and that you're able to get new people who've never played into the game, right? Which is a level of teaching, and from that level of teaching comes being able to explain why your ruling decision is the way it is in a sensible way. So those are factors that you build up in real life, where online you don't need that, right? Like PTCGO does 90% of the judging work for you. Anything that happens outside of that would probably fall under like some sportsmanship conduct section of the rulings. It's not going to be a card game ruling anymore. And those sportsmanlike conduct things are almost always a he said, she said situation. But at least if you're in real life, you're talking to both players and you can kind of gauge how the two are responding, right? Because if one person's very clearly heated and angry, you might be thinking maybe they did say something they shouldn't have said. Online, when it's text in a text box, that's impossible. Yeah. So it's not as easy to judge online, or like to TO online, as people would think it is, because of that missing communication step. But that's all you have to deal with, because the game does the rest. Like the deck check things, like that's handled for you. Everything is basically done. So you're then left on actually what is one of the more difficult rulings to get right, which is the player behavior stuff. And that's also where a lot of controversy can come from, because what one person might see as inappropriate and too far could be a joke between friends that was misconstrued, right?
Coochie Baby 5000.
That's what I was thinking, but I didn't want to say it.
No, exactly, right? And it's one of those things where, you can't tell intent in those situations. So it's a joke between friends that gets out of hand, right? Sort of thing. And we had a case of that in a real life regional too. At one of the regionals in Sweden a couple of years ago, two friends were playing each other. One of them at the end of the game jokingly showed him the bird, which was seen
by a judge.
By a judge, and they were then given the appropriate penalty, and they then lost that, which then meant they were out. And I was like, but I might be slightly misremembering, but like that was basically the gist of it. And it's like those rulings are the very difficult ones to get right. A card game ruling is like how two cards interact. There is a right and a wrong. With people, not so straightforward. So that can be very difficult and is the cause of most of the issues online.
I would say as well, when you throw into that mix what we've never had to deal with before, which is we have a global community. So we have Japanese players playing, we have players from Chile, we have players from the States, we have someone from Basildon down the road here, we have communities online that have in jokes, they have silently agreed upon standards of behavior that maybe people outside that circle don't know or understand. We have people coming from other online games where the standard of behavior and the way you speak to each other is absolutely terrible, but that's just accepted as being okay. And they might come to our game, say something which would be considered extremely mild and wonder what the problem is. And being able to run a tournament is about being able to communicate with all those different types of player and being able to get them all on the same page as quickly as possible. Maybe I come under a bit of fire for being a bit more lenient than I should be. I'm always very much everybody gets a second chance. If you come in, you do something wrong, we'll talk to you about it. We'll explain why what you did was incorrect. We'll make you apologize, but you're always welcome to come back. Second time you do it, well, you just don't care. Sorry. But I would rather, with things like player behavior and the problems we see there, I would rather be eliminating the behavior than eliminating the players. And that's a very big thing for me. It's an easy fix to eliminate the players, but it doesn't get rid of the problem. You want to eliminate the behavior and educate everybody so that they know what's going on. Then the problem goes away long term.
Yeah.
We're going to be wrapping up here on the Metapod. Sean is pulling the cane out.
He pulled the plug on us.
I'm just looking at the time.
Yeah,
I'm looking at the time.
I have to ask one question. Both of you, what is your favorite deck of all time?
Mine is going to be Dragapult VMAX. from Rebel Clash last year, purely because it was the deck that I did fairly well with in PC1, and that's the only time that's ever happened. So I was like, I'll take it. That's got to be my favorite now.
Hey, you know what? My favorite deck is the only top cut I got in a cup is Pidgeotto Control in Cosmic Eclipse. But I love
we
that
can wrap
deck.
up now. We can wrap up.
just now I'm grabbing the stick and I'm just pulling Jake away after saying Pidgeotto Control.
Like, Jake, shut up about that deck.
No, Jake, honestly, if it's my favorite deck would be, did you ever play Rhyperior Mill in Sumlock with Meganium and the Charizard GX with a super boost, which you then drop on it and mill for 10 on the last turn of the game to win? Absolutely banging deck. Absolutely amazing. Evolve into Rhyperior, mill 3 off the top, and you just keep Ace Rollering with a Rainbow, mill 3. Lovely, lovely, lovely deck.
Well, we need to bring that back in the retro events going on. Like, we need to try that.
No, I'm zipped. I'm not saying anything else. Done.
No. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good. Oh, by the way, anybody out there watching, we'll show all of our mugs because I have a Pokemon mug now as we wrap up. Jake has his Pokemon mug.
It's now a requirement that whenever we have guests on the podcast, everybody has to bring a mug.
Yes.
You don't necessarily have to drink out of it, but you got to show off a mug at least.
And as you might have noticed there,
YouTube of all the mugs that we see.
As you might have noticed there, Neil is a Porygon stan, big Porygon stan. So if you
Porygon for life.
Yeah, yes. So if you ever see anything about Porygon or find any random Porygon cards, I'm sure Neil would love to see them and have them. Yeah, I think that'll do it. Oh, we did get 50 reviews. You posted it on Twitter, Jake. So this is for the folks out there. I will look into figuring out both a place that Jake and I can record at Gen Con, assuming Jake is able to join me in Indianapolis. IRL.
Assuming that Gen Con is still happening, because I think Indianapolis just hit the red.
Oh, no. Okay, well, a lot of assumptions there. But assuming all of those things, just get the vaccine. Just do it. Do it, Indy. I know you are. It's not you. Talking to your neighbors. But yeah, and then we'll also try to figure out maybe some way for us to, if it happens, to meet up with people, as long as it's safe. I will caveat that now, considering the change in things here in the U.S. the last month.
Yeah, but are there any shout outs that you want to give? You know, I know there's an important play, Limitless one at least, financially, that I think we should mention, because I don't think we've mentioned it yet. So, Connor, do you want to give any shout outs? Where can people find you? Things like that?
Yeah, so it's pointless following me on Twitter. I don't tweet anything. But go and follow the main LimitlessTCG page, or from that, go find Robin, because Robin's the one who, he doesn't tweet much, but he's the one who does basically all the work on the Play Limitless website. It's basically supported entirely by ads on the website, more or less. For a long time, it wasn't even that, and he was just paying for the server out of pocket. He's doing it because he wants to help the community, right? It's the same with the main Limitless page. But the best way, if you would like to support the website, is to go to the LimitlessTCG Patreon, so patreon.com/LimitlessTCG, and just give a little there. It makes a big difference, because it's not free running one of those things. And yeah, he does it because he wants to, so help him out.
Neil? Any
just if you want to find me on Twitter, you can at Neil_Pi. Come play in the Sunday Open though. Every Sunday, European time, late afternoon to early evening. I've got to do a big shout to Niall, who I essentially handed the keys over to recently, because my league's in real life picking back up, which means I won't be available on Sundays. He's now running that for me. Another very experienced judge from the UK. Very, very cool guy, very helpful. But please, come play in the tournament, and just be nice to each other.
You can Venmo Neil Pi at I'm just kidding.
I love that sentiment. Just be nice to each other, especially online. It's a great way to wrap it up. Just
thank
be
you
kind.
again for joining us on this week of the Metapod. I love that we're featuring these people that have, and how talk about kind of how the online game has changed in all these different aspects. You know, TOs, content creators. Soon we'll be talking to players, and just all of these people. So thank you again. so much for joining us on this week's Metapod podcast, the podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. Sean, do you have any final thoughts? I didn't ask you for your opinion.
Pika. Goodbye.